Morning, everybody. Welcome to today's session. So it was today. Coming up with today's session was another one of those last-minute things that often, have come about because I've thought, well, actually, that's quite important to talk about. So, so then today's session is about the idea of Buddhist lineage. So, you have a strong tradition of teachers and disciples, guru-disciple relationships in Buddhism. So I want to look a little bit at that, and particularly how that can go wrong, or how, not just in Buddhism actually, but in things like politics as well, where you've got lineage that, like say Russian Revolution, you had Lenin, and then Stalin kind of took over, and then he started to deviate, from the revolution really, and take on power for himself and all that sort of thing. So there's always a sort of danger of that sort of thing happening. People kind of get another idea in the head other than what what's the main thing. So the main thing in Buddhism is loving kindness and ethics, support for people and this sort of thing. So so I've got a bit of an example of how that went wrong in one particular Buddhist movement. But I just want to talk a little bit about the whole thing of like, well, how do you kind of, what is a lineage, and how do you whose decision is it about what who is your teacher, and who can anyone claim anyone to be their teacher, for instance, this sort of thing. So so this is what we're going to look at today. I slept all right last night, but a little bit tired slightly, so have to see how we get on. So it'd be a good idea to start with a bit of body work. So if you want to stand up, we'll begin with that. Okay. So begin by give your hands a bit of a shake, and legs. Rub your hands together. Give your face a bit of a. Actually, just put your hands over your forehead, over your eyes, and curving your spine over. And turning your attention away from the world. You don't need to be responding to the world right now. Just give your face a bit of a wash with your hands. Just generally coming into contact, into relationship with your physicality, with your sensations in your skin. And weight your chest up a little bit. Down your arms, back of your hand, palm of your hand. Other side. Start your body. Okay, bit of gentle swinging backwards and forwards. Point the other direction. And then just rotate your hips. So try to keep body and mind together in the same place, so it's not like your mind's ahead of your body or your body's ahead of your mind. Just make your movements quite deliberate. You're just kind of waiting to yourself to sort of gradually arrive into your body, to your physicality. And often you just need enough time for that to happen. Then just put your hands on your stomach, so when you notice that you're breathing out, just bend your knees and straighten your knees on the in-breath. You're going down on the out-breath, coming up on the in-breath, down on the out-breath, up on the in-breath, down on the out-breath. Put your hands out the front, bringing them up to your chin on the in-breath and down on the out-breath. Down, up, coming up, down. And past your chin this time, into the air, to the sides. Again, up the middle, out to the sides. one last one. And then take a seat. So what we're going to do this morning is the mindfulness breathing practice using the traditional 4 stages. So just getting used to this new position that your body's in, and just let your body just sit there, reflecting that it knows how to sit down. It doesn't need any help to sit down. So you just kind of balancing your body so that the weight goes down into the ground, into the seat. And then you're aware of how you feel at the moment. So your mind and emotions are kind of free to engage with how you are and with the objects of the meditation, which is watching the sensations of your breath as you breathe in and out. Mindfulness of breathing. So the first stage, breathing in, following your breath as it comes in and out, and then marking the end of the out breath with a count. So breathe in, breathe out, 1, breathe in, breathe out, 2, until you get to 10. Counting until you get to 10, then start from 1 again. Just silently in your head. So now I'm just moving the counting to before the breath begins. So third stage, just dropping the counting, just watching the breath as continuously as you can. In the final stage, just taking your attention to the delicate sensations that you experience where the breath enters and leaves the body. So in your own time, just bringing that meditation to a close. Okay, so I'll get started on the theme. Okay, so the theme today is Buddhist lineage, and so over the weekend, we had some within Triratna. We had some celebrations marking the founding of the movement back in 1967. Yeah, and so there's a couple of anyway, so there was a talk on Saturday by Dharma, and what he often gives a similar talk, really. So his talks often focus on what people need to do to practice effectively, within a particular movement. So so what he was talking about was so this is the basic theme for today, is the conditions under which we the first thing we need to do as conditions for growth for ourselves is to persevere with the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the Buddha is the inspiration of the Buddha. Connecting with the Buddha. The Dharma are his teachings. The Sangha is the community of Buddhists. So unless we persevere with these three things, knowing what they are, connecting up with them, then there's not much possibility of growth really happening. So we need to have a kind of glimmer of awakening being possible, or put in ordinary terms, a glimmering of an ability to get somewhere in life and overcome suffering and, create a happy, fulfilling life that's not going to be dominated by reaction to things like old age, sickness, and death. So it's like we're able to deal with all those sorts of things as well. Have a good life, ethical life, and have some sort of wisdom as well in the end, in relation to the facts of life, sort of thing. So yeah, and then the second. So he said that there's a second round of conditions. In addition to this perseverance with Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, which is about engaging with the training, so the training, it needs to have a particular shape, be precise enough, So it's like it says that it's not enough to go for refuge to the Sangha, which I suppose what he means is to just be a part of a Sangha, of a group of Buddhists. It has to be more specific than that. So we have to come into relationship with companions in the spiritual life, learn from them and share with them, and in a way, we have to go for refuge not to the Sangha but to communication itself. So the communication that is going to lead us to growth. And there'll be people who are more experienced than us, who've got greater clarity about things and all that sort of thing. So coming into communication with these sorts of people is just really kind of important. We're not going to grow unless we're in contact with people who have more growth than we have. And so yeah, Dhammarati sort of talked about the fact that Ratnaguna's doing some investigation of a text called Chogyam Trungpa, precepts collected from here and there. It's about what's called the precept of the Llama. So the precept of the Llama is the specific kind of instructions or guidance that you might get from somebody that you really respect, and it says that the precept of the is not a kind of rule, but specific teaching chosen by a teacher for a disciple's specific needs. It is, as Bhante puts it, more like a clarification and a throwing light on, rather than telling someone to just go off and do this or that. And the most important point is that the precept of the Llama. So this is the in a way the kind of the teaching or direct instruction that we get from our guru is more important than scriptures and commentaries. So basically what that means is it's not about, I suppose it's like saying we might think that we know all sorts of things about Buddhism, we might think we have all sorts of realizations and things, but that this is irrelevant or not as important as the direct instruction, that we get from that we need to get from our teachers and stuff. Anyway, so what I've done is I've outlined the basic points I want to make at the beginning. So if I go off track, then I know that I've actually said in the beginning what I wanted to say. So okay, so now I'm going to look at Sangarachita's background. So Sangarachita was born in 1925, and he's the founder of Triratna Buddhism, so he was out in India and at the end of the Second World War, and basically he saw himself as a Buddhist. He wanted to connect with Buddhism, and he became a wandering mendicant. Like this is a tradition in India. So he wandered around for a couple of years around India, and he went around all sorts of different ashrams and things, trying to learn about. Well, ultimately, he wanted to learn about Buddhism, but a lot of the ashrams were like Hindu ashrams, so he's kind of learning all about meditation and just about kind of Indian religion, I suppose. But ultimately, yeah, he was bent on becoming a Buddhist monk. So after a couple of years, eventually, him and his companion that he walked around India for 2 years, were ordained. I think it was 1947, and then so he was ordained into Theravada Buddhism, and so here's a picture of him with two other monks practicing mindfulness. He's got his begging bowl there, and so he ended up near Kalimpong, near the Tibetan border, and made connections with other Buddhists. So here's a picture of him with this is Lama Govinda. So he was a German monk, very interested in Tibetan Buddhism. So he made friends there. He made connections. He's trying to he had a teacher called Jagdish Kashyap, who I think was a professor at Indian University in Sanskrit, something like that, Pali in Sanskrit. And so he was his first teacher in a way. So he said, go and stay in Kalimpong and work for the good of Buddhism. So that's what he did. So, he set up a kind of young men's Buddhist association, which has some of the people in it probably. And he also met various Tibetan lamas who were coming out of Tibet, fleeing the Chinese invasion. So here's this guy here is called I forgot his name, blimey. Yamyang Kensei Choki Lodro. So these are Sangarachita's 8 main teachers. So you see that. So he's got Jagdish Kashyap, who's a Theravadan, Yogi Chen, who was a Chinese hermit living in Kalimpong. So here's a picture of Yogi Chen. So he had this encyclopedic knowledge of Buddhism, and so a lot of Sangarachita would go and spend hours with him, trying to get some of that knowledge that he had out, from him. And also his Dada Rinpoche. So Dada Rinpoche was a kind of senior lama, and he was actually looking after the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya, which was the site of the Buddha's enlightenment. Nobody seemed to be wanting to look after it, apart from Hindus, So he developed a good friendship with Sangarachita. So you can see there, just in you can see the connection, can't you? There, There's a picture. Another one. So Sangarachita, in Tibetan Buddhism, you have bodhisattva figures that that people who are archetypes of enlightenment, representing compassion or so here's one. So this is Avalokiteshvara, whose name means the Lord who looks down in compassion. So Avalokiteshvara is a figure representing compassion that that Tibetan Buddhists would meditate upon. So what's the symbolism here? Well, in the two hands, it's got this form. It's got 4 arms. So he's holding a jewel there, which is the wish fulfilling jewel. So basically, what's closest to Avalokiteshvara's heart is the welfare of all beings. So it's like he's wanting all beings to be well, to be happy. So that's his emotional response to the world, And then he gives various things. So there's a form with 1,000 arms, and it's got all sorts of things that he's giving to people in the world. In this form, he's just got a crystal mala, which is like he's counting all the beings as he's pulling them out of conditioned existence, helping them to nirvana. And he's got a flower as well, which is a symbol of holding up a flower of, instant realization, sort of just seeing the nature of things through beauty, maybe. So he looks out into the world and he wants to help. So when people take on, so order members take on a visualization practice. So when they get ordained, so I've got a visualization practice, which is the 1,000-arm form of Avalokiteshvara, which I do regularly. And it's just my inspiration towards, it's like a template for what I want to be more of, and in the same way, I've got this name Mahabodhi, which is like a reminder of great enlightenment, is the translation. So it's like a reminder of what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, as a Buddhist. So getting out of being small and getting out of being unenlightened and trying to become have a wiser and more compassionate perspective. So in Tibetan Buddhism, so what Sangarachita found was that Theravada Buddhism, he found it a bit dry. It was like not really kind of engaging, a lot of focus on mindfulness, and not so much on emotional cultivation, or he saw it as a what he called a via negativa rather than a via positiva, or whatever, via affirma, So it's all about not doing things rather than doing things. But Tibetan Buddhism is much more about doing things, about being compassionate, helping people in the world, not just trying to renounce the world and just be overcome craving, but to actually have a positive effect on the world. So Tibetans give empowerments and things. In modern Tibetan Buddhism, they're often doing that. Yamyang Khyentse Chogyam here in the middle, he's like one of the central figures in Tibetan Buddhism. And here's Sangarachita at the back. And so he gave him, I think, 3 different visualization practices of these bodhisattvas. I think Green Tara was one of them. So you might say, so Sangarachita claims Yamyang Khyentse Chogyam as one of his teachers, right? And he also claims Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche is one of his teachers as well, and the others in the diagram there. So you might say, well, so here's a central question for today. So what gives Sangarachita the right to claim that Yamyang Khyentse Rinpoche is his teacher? And a question that people might ask is like, well, is he not just trying to get validation for his own practice and lineage, from somebody who's established like that and is a kind of name, that sort of thing? Well, I think in the end, it's up to in my opinion, it's up to the individual. So anyway, teachers are not about status. It's not about status. So when you when you claim somebody is your teacher, that doesn't mean anything like you have what they have. It doesn't mean that the qualities that they have, you have. It's more that you're wanting their qualities. It's more that, really. It's more like you're aspiring to being like them, and you want to come into relationship with them in order for some of what they have to like rub off on you. So in this way, I see Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche as one of my teachers, mainly just because he just looks such a kind bloke, and when I was getting ordained in Spain on the 4-month ordination retreat, I made this little booklet that I had in front of me when I was meditating all the time, and had a little picture of him on it, and had the word kindness written on it. So this was like a kind of precept that I was trying to take from him, to be more kind, and to kind towards myself, kind to others, and that sort of thing. So, and also here's a picture of Jnananda, who was one of the teachers at West London Buddhist Centre when I first got involved there, and I was around him for like about 6 years in the late 80s and early 90s, and then I've had a friendship with him since. So and Paramananda as well is another one I see as a kind of teacher, and it's like, there's something about there's a Sangarachita talks about a vital mutual responsiveness being there, So I feel like that. I feel like there's a vital mutual responsiveness, like I'm interested in Jnananda and Paramananda and what they're doing. Well, Jnananda's died now, but I'm really fascinated by his ability with language. It's so fantastic, and Paramananda, like I've got, lots of. He's been really helpful to me throughout me Buddhist life, comes and goes a bit, the relationship, but it's like, there's a real connection there, and it goes, and I think with Sangarachita and Dada Rinpoche, it's like Dada Rinpoche is sometimes talked about as a living bodhisattva, he's just really keen on helping people, and he would get up at 4:30 in the morning. He ran a school for Tibetan children, and he'd gets up at 4:30 in the morning, do like 3 or so hours of practice in order to sort his motivation out before he started the day. So he's really keen on things happening for people, actually having an effect in the world. Sangarachita was always just really interested in like, well, what, getting to the nub of what Buddhism really was, like what's Buddhism, what, how's it, what's the real Buddhism, underneath cultural accretions or whatever it is, he's constantly trying to get down to that. And so between the two of them, there's this kind of mutual, like responsiveness. It's like they got each other about what they were doing, in life, what they were most interested in, what's most central to their lives, So this is and you could say this is a guru-disciple relationship, but I think Dada Rinpoche got quite a lot from being around Sangarachita, so it's like it's a two-way street, Yeah, so in a way, I mean, one thing I've focused a lot on actually in these sessions is this idea that in the end, in a way, what we do and don't do, what we have faith in or don't have faith in, is like our business really, and nobody else's. So if so, nobody can come along and find out, but through direct observation, what's really going on inside of me. Am I being genuine or not? That there's no access to that. I can't. It's a question of opinion as to whether you think somebody's being genuine or not. So to come along and sort of say, oh, that person is not being genuine, or they're only doing this because of this motive or whatever it is. It's not. It's an improper question, really. We just have an opinion on other people, and that's it. So we can never know really what's going on, within another person. So, so in the end, it's just a question of like, we pays our money and we takes our choice. So, I'm gonna go with Jnananda, Sangarachita, Dilgo, Kensei, Paramananda, and that's my choice. These are the people who I sort of see as like teachers and things. So in Tibetan Buddhism, you've got something called, there's lots. It's very orientated around symbolism. So they've got something called a refuge tree. So Refuge Tree is in Tibetan Buddhism is something like this, but what they would have is, so basically it's like a rainbow coloured cloud down here, and then you've got this lotus plant kind of growing up out of it with all different petals and things. So in the central one here, you've got what's most important. So here in this is the Triratna refuge tree. So you've got the Buddha here, most important, and then this is the Buddha of the past and the Buddha of the future. And then you've got other things that are important. So on this refuge tree, there's Sangarachita and his 8 main teachers. You've got the Arahants, or the enlightened disciples of the Buddha, from Theravada Buddhism. So Sariputra, Moggallana, Ananda, Dharmadina, and Markashipa. And then on this side, you've got the Bodhisattvas representing the Mahayana. So there's Avalokiteshvara, Green Tara, Kshitigarbha, Manjushri, and Peaceful Vajrapani. And then behind, on the lotus at the back, you've got all the books of the Dharma. And then here up in the sky here, you've got the teachers of the past. So you've got 4 Japanese teachers, Hakuin, Dogen, Shinran, and Kukai. And then you've got 3 Chinese teachers, Huineng, Xuanzang, and Chiai. And then you've got 4 Tibetan teachers, Milarepa, Atisa, Padmasambhava, and Tsongkhapa. And then you've got 5 Indian teachers at the back, Nagarjuna, Asanga, Vasubandhu, Buddhaghosa, and Shantideva. And then up here you've got the 5 Buddha Mandala and Vajrasattva at the top. And then you've got all these offering goddesses and gods and goddesses making offerings. So basically, this is called Refuge Tree because it contains all the kind of possible strands of inspiration that a person might connect with within a particular tradition, you know. So within Triratna, these are all possible influences, you know. So you might identify more with a Mahayana figure like Avalokiteshvara, or you might identify with a Theravada figure, you know, like a Pali Buddhist figure like Sariputra, or you might identify with one of Sangarachita's teachers, or Sangarachita. You know, you might identify with the Dharma, the books of the Dharma. You might identify with like Shinran or something like that. So it's like, you know, it includes all the kind of main kind of influences, really. So in Tibetan Buddhism, this would be different. It would have Padmasambhava in the middle. So Padmasambhava is the semi-mythical figure who took Buddhism to Tibet. And then you'd have all these like lineages of gurus, you know. And it would be different for different Tibetan traditions. You know, you'd have different lineages of gurus. So there are 4 main lineages in Tibetan Buddhism, but you also have a kind of what's called a remade movement, which is, so Yamyang Khyentse Chokyi Lodre was a remade teacher, so he was wanting to bring together all the different traditions, you know, the 4 main traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. In a way, Sangarachita has been a bit of a remade teacher as well, in the sense that he's wanting to, it's an ecumenical tradition drawing on all the different, all aspects of Buddhism, and trying to get what's most helpful from each, that sort of thing. Okay, so here, I'll just show you. There's another picture. I like showing pictures. So here's this is Kshitigarbha. So he's one of the bodhisattvas. This is Bayaloka. So this is a picture in the Pavaloka shrine room on the wall. You know, it's kind of life-size figure. So Kshitigarbha kind of is interesting. He goes into hell, into the hell realms, and helps beings in the hell realms. So he's really not afraid. You know, it's like not afraid of being in touch with lots of suffering, and being able to. His compassion is so strong that, you know, it's kind of unaffected by that. You know? Okay, so I've talked a little bit about, you know, what I think, like real, real teacher-disciple relationships are like. You know, there's this kind of mutual responsiveness. There's often a kind of just a genuine friendliness, and you know, kind of love of the other person. So here's a picture of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche with Chogyam Trungpa, who established quite a large movement of Tibetan Buddhism in America. And you can see that there's just this delight there between them, you know. So yeah, so you know, this is what real, you know, Buddhist lineage is about, you know. But sometimes it can go wrong. You know, things can go wrong, and maybe when some of those conditions aren't there, you know, or you know, the person, you know, the person, you know, kind of within the lineage isn't is lacking in some way or other, you know, or is limited, is kind of blocked or something, or unable to look at something, or but they still want to be part of it, you know, they still want to be part of a lineage. So I remember, like, listening to a podcast in our time with Melvin Bragg, and he was talking about the paper. I think it was called the Papacy or something like that. And he was making the point that if you looked at Christianity in say 900 AD, it would be all about your relationship with God, what you thought was God. So it'd be a personal thing, you and your connection with your God. And then if you wind forward to the time of the Inquisition, what happened was that the papacy became, the Pope became the intermediary between God and you. So it's almost like the papacy started to decide what was sin and what wasn't sin. But before that, it'd be between you and you and your maker, or whatever. It'd be your conscience would decide when you've done something wrong. So once you introduce this kind of legalistic framework and intermediary thing, it's almost like it starts to destroy the whole thing. You end up with a hierarchy which is like not a natural one. It's sort of enforced, and then it can just then become corrupted. And it becomes all about power and that sort of thing. So there's a story around Chogyam Trungpa that illustrates this sort of the kind of almost like a corruption of lineage. So here's a book. I really recommend this book. It's called Dragon Thunder: My Life with Chogyam Trungpa by Diana Mukpo. So Diana Mukpo was his wife. She was quite young actually when they met. He came over. He came over. He was in Oxford, and he met her. She was quite young, and then he got married and they went to America, and so this is her story of his life, and I mean, he was quite a very unusual character, a very kind of. I think probably the reason why these two are sort of smiling at each other like this is like Dilgo Khyentse. I mean, he would really want people to be getting real Buddhism in America, And so Chogyam Trungpa went over there, and he thought, well, hang on a minute. It's not just about kind of getting dressed up as a monk and presenting the teachings of the Buddha, like overcome suffering through, get rid of craving and this sort of thing. What he saw was this complex situation where there's all this sort of forces going on within American society, of money and sex and violence and all this. And it's like, so Tibetan Buddhism is always trying to kind of engage with like the kind of demons of the society. That's what Padmasambhava did. He converted the demons of Tibet to Buddhism. So Chogyam Trungpa was very interested in just being real, and in a way, sort of directly kind of challenging the culture, but in a way, you can't do that. He did that from the inside out. So what he did was he just engaged with the culture, and he tried to take the Americans as they were, with their interests and their materialism and their this, that, and the other. And then he tried to kind of like somehow transform it in some way or other. But it was all very much about being real and not yeah, he had a book called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. So it's like he just really didn't want people to be thinking in terms of achieving something that's sort of separate in some way from real life, some sort of distant state or something that's not real. I mean, he was very unorthodox in his teachings, but I think but he was also very attractive to people, and he set up something called the Narupa Institute, which was like a Buddhist university, and he got people like Allen Ginsberg to do poetry workshops and things. He got scientists to come in and do stuff. He just wanted to bring Buddhism into contact with American culture in as much as possible, in as full a way as possible. And yeah, so he's unorthodox methods. I mean, he got people. I mean, it's central in Tibetan Buddhism, the idea of serving the universe of living beings. Helping all living beings become enlightened. And I lost my thread a minute. Yeah, so one of the things he thought was like, well, Americans are so individualistic that just getting them to be looking after other people would be a step forward, for them, So he set up like a court in his movement, and it was like he got people. They all got dressed up, and they were doing all these banquets and serving, So the idea was to just overcome, just self preoccupation and stuff, by serving. He also got people. He formed a kind of like a Buddhist military called the Doje Kasung, and it was just they just go play games in up in the hills in Colorado. But the point was to, I don't know, just sort of develop, kind of positive, like qualities like bravery and this sort of thing. And so anyway, yeah. So and I think what happened really was that a bit like people, when I've come across people who've been involved in Trumpa's movement, I've really liked them because they're just real people, they're ordinary people who are like having fun, and they're not all serious and spiritual or whatever, but they're kind of real, and alive and that. In my experience, anyway. Yeah. So I mean, Chogyam Trungpa, there's a thing in Tibetan Buddhism called crazy wisdom. So there's a tradition of kind of unorthodox gurus doing all sorts of things that are, that would be questionable, under ordinary sort of ethical circumstances. But the point is that, and this is a question of faith again, that they would be doing that in order to help that particular person. So pushing people into facing their conditioning is part of the whole Tibetan Buddhist process. So he would push people, and I mean, he had relationships with all sorts of people. Even despite being married, he had relationships with the women in his Sangha. He was, he drank a lot. I don't know whether he was an alcoholic. I mean, he seemed to be able to maintain his clarity, even though he drank loads. Yeah, but the whole thing was sort of had a purpose, which was this, making real human beings out of the people, that came along, and you're getting them to to face their balls, So I mean, I think even his wife in the book, his wife gets a bit jealous at a certain point because he's going out with these different women and stuff. But you could see it might be that a way that you would see that as like her possessiveness was getting challenged a bit by that, and maybe that was a good thing. So that's a way of seeing it, But I think with all these sorts of things, it's like you have to have this undercurrent, really, of care and kindness, and so you only really do those sorts of things with people if you've got an already established relationship of trust with them, and that it's going to actually transform them rather than destroy them. That that's got to be really clear for you. So there's a lot of trust involved. Now, what happened was Chogyam Trungpa, he got ill in the end, and he had a successor in mind. So this guy, Osel Tendzin, was his kind of chosen successor. But basically what happened was that I don't think Osel Tenzing had the quality really to take over from in a real way, to take over from Chogyam Trungpa. So even though he was kind of like the lineage holder, the successor, he didn't effectively live up to that, or he failed it in a way. Well, not in a way, he really failed it. So basically, what happened was he was gay, and he got AIDS, and he knew he had AIDS, and in fact, according to one story, Chogyam Trungpa knew he had AIDS. In fact, I can't see how this happened, but it says that he tested him. he tested him without his knowledge. He'd have to. I suppose he'd have to create some scenario where he took some blood from him or something like that. But anyway, he told him that he had AIDS, and to be careful, with his relationships, but he wasn't, So even after he knew he had AIDS, he carried on having sexual relationships with people in the movement, and and basically, I think somebody died, of AIDS that he'd infected. And when he took over from Trungpa, Trumpa's death, according to Diane Mukpo, she says that following Rinpoche's death, the Vajra region, that's Osel Tendzin, moved immediately to consolidate power and began to slowly weaken the community's financial and psychological support for my family. So basically, Trungpa had his wife, Diana, and then he had this, I think he had more than two sons. He had two sons at least. So it's like, you know, if you're taking over from somebody, and your first thing you do is to withdraw financial support from your predecessor's family, what does that say about you? You know, what does that say about this kind of mutual responsiveness? Would, you know, it says more about your desire for controlling things and, you know, for power in a way. Yeah, it says then, you know, it says Rinpoche had left instructions that a committee consisting of myself, the regent, the Sawang, which is the son, the Kasung Ki Yap, whatever it is, and two other people, was to be convened to help with the transition after his death. I was to chair this committee. The regent never once brought this group together. So in late 1988, the community learned that the regent was HIV positive and developed AIDS. A young man in the community who had had a brief sexual encounter with the regent was diagnosed with HIV and could only trace his illness to the Vajra regent. There was an uproar in the Buddhist community and in the press. The regent, without actually being stripped of power, was forced by actions of the board and other community members into retreat in California. Finally, with the intercession of His Holiness Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, the regent gave up his attempt to exercise authority over the community and was, in a sense, exiled into retreat for the remainder of his life. Yeah, so I remember, I don't know where I read it, but I remember reading somewhere that so this is Dilgo Khyentse here, who talked Osel Tendzin out of carrying on being, you know, leading the community. And I think in Tibetan Buddhism, it's almost like you can't really you can't really, once you've given somebody empowerment, you can't really take it back. But he just encouraged him to just go off and just not be involved. But one of the things that was really striking, really, was what Dilgo Khyentse said to him, you know. And he said, the most important thing isn't sort of you being part of, you know, being a teacher or anything like that, or leading a movement. The most important thing is kindness, you know. So here we have, you know, somebody really in touch with the Buddhist tradition. So Dilgo Khyentse spent 15 years in solitary retreat. In fact, he didn't really want to come out, you know. He was one of the teachers of the Dalai Lama. So just really in touch with the most important things. And so Osel Tendzin really in touch with not the most important things, you know, like thinking about power and, you know, kind of position and this sort of thing. Yeah, I'm getting through it. Okay, so just to finish off, I thought I'd look at a couple of figures from history. Basically, Joe Stalin and Mao's widow. So these are two people who've kind of been involved in like counter revolutions, which, you know, you could say that Osel Tendzin was kind of a little bit doing that. So it's interesting to just look at the conditions that might lead to this sort of thing. So So this article's called "How did Stalin get away with murder?" Stalin's name meant man of steel, and he lived up to it. His reign of terror caused the death and suffering of tens of millions. But this powerful man began life as a son of an alcoholic cobbler and a doting mother who sent him to study to be a priest. So basically, yeah, so he was born into a very poor family. He had smallpox, age 7, which left him with a pockmarked face and slightly deformed left arm. He was bullied by others' children, felt a continual need to prove himself. His father was an alcoholic who dealt out regular beatings. So his mum wanted him to be a priest, but he rebelled against that and read Karl Marx. It became an atheist. And then he like a he you know he was you know, became a revolutionary. He robbed a bank to help support the the cause. His first wife died of typhus in 1907. He was racked with grief. So he took part in the Russian Revolution. So you could say, so here's Lenin. There's Lenin and there's Stalin. You know, he took part in the Russian Revolution. He was hailed as a hero when he helped Lenin to escape from the Tsar's army into Finland. When Lenin took power, he appointed Stalin to be General Secretary of the Communist Party. And then after Lenin's death in 1924, it says he began ruthlessly promoting himself as his political heir. Many in the party expected Red Army leader Leon Trotsky to be Lenin's natural successor, but his ideas are too idealistic for the majority of the Communist Party. Stalin, however, develops his own nationalistic brand of Marxism, socialism in one country, concentrating on strengthening the Soviet Union rather than world revolution. When Trotsky criticizes his plans, Stalin has him exiled. Stalin's ideas are popular within the party, and by the late 1920s, he becomes dictator of the Soviet Union. Then you got a period of rapid industrialization, you know, so and collectivization of farms. So the farms are all pretty inefficient, but yeah, just like in these forced changes, you know, millions and millions of people died of famine, and then eventually in the Gulag, you know, they died. His political opposition. He says he becomes increasingly. He promotes the image of himself as the great benevolent leader and hero of the Soviet Union, yet is increasingly paranoid and purges the Communist Party and army of anyone who might oppose him. 93 of the 139 Central Committee members are killed. 81 of the 103 generals and admirals are executed. The secret police strictly enforce Stalinism, and people are encouraged to inform on one another. 3 million people are accused of opposing communism and sent to the Gulag, a system of labor camps in Siberia. Around 750,000 people are summarily killed. So he grieves a lot over his first wife, and then his second wife. Says he marries his second wife in 1919. But he kind of abuses her quite a lot, and she eventually kills herself in 1932. He makes sure her death is officially reported as being caused by appendicitis. His son from his first wife is a soldier in the Red Army. He was captured early on in World War II. When the Germans propose to free him in a prisoner swap, Stalin refuses, as he believes his son surrendered voluntarily, and his son dies in a concentration camp in 1943. Doesn't get any better, does it, really? Yeah, the other figure is Chan Qing, who's Mao's widow. So she featured in a recent documentary by Adam Curtis, and he was talking about how she was like one of the main instigators behind the Cultural Revolution, where millions of people were kind of killed. And it seems like, according to Adam Curtis's documentary, what happened was that she had this resentment against, when she was an actress, other people did better than she did, and she had this kind of resentment of, so it's almost like it translated into when she had the power to just purge people of culture, really. It's kind of simple as that, and punish people for being better than she might have been, whatever. So I think, so what's the point I want to make through bringing in Stalin and Mao's widow? Well, obviously, Stalin had a kind of a bit of a horrible upbringing. I suppose, like, a bit like Hitler did. Like Hitler was he wanted to be an artist and stuff. Stalin, well, he didn't want to be a priest, did he? But anyway, but Hitler had all that sort of living in poverty and the kind of depression, that sort of carrying your wages home in a wheelbarrow and all that sort of stuff in Germany in the 1920s. So it's almost like this kind of you had a hierarchy there in the Russian Revolution, where you had this kind of more sort of pure aim, which was like world sort of communism, helping all workers around the world, kind of. And I think originally in the Communist Manifesto that Marx, it wasn't all about economics. It was about culture as well, and about just general abundance of experience of life. I think so, anyway. So you've got this ideal, and then under the pressure of something it needing to continue, but without, so if Lenin and Stalin had this mutual vital mutual responsiveness, this real friendship around the ideals, what they were wanting to happen and stuff, and with Trotsky as well, if it had been kind of not somebody turning away from the ideals towards, well, how do we make this work, which is all about committees and power, and in a way, I suppose, like Stalin became more and more isolated, as things happened to him, as his wife committed suicide, as his, to refuse to do an exchange for your own son, and to let him die in a concentration camp on a matter of principle, it's just showing a sort of very great distance from humanity, So I think, the possibility of any of us, I suppose, becoming like a Stalin or a Hitler is always there. It's always sort of, if we just get separated out from a kind of what is a positive lineage in a way, in Buddhism, Dilgo Khyentse, Sangarachita, whoever brings you more into the human world, Dilgo Khyentse and Dada Rinpoche and Sangeratchita. It's just kind of supportive to maybe that's my main point, that Buddhist hierarchy has to be supportive to humanity, to growing humanity and life affirmation rather than anything else, So it's not about maintaining a lineage or keeping something going because it's Buddhist or whatever it is, In the end, the test is in what it actually tastes like, like cooking, isn't it? It's in the end, it's like it's what does the food taste like? So does it taste of freedom? Does it taste of does your Buddhist movement taste of liberation? Does it taste of humanity? Does it have the kind of feeling of tolerance and support, or you could say your political organization as well, or does it have something else? Does it taste of something different? Does it taste of fear? Does it taste of powerlessness, lack of freedom, imprisonment, yeah. I had a thought there, I forgot what it is. Yeah, so I suppose that's it in a way. It's like we have to keep making these choices, to move towards the light and away from the darkness, So it's no excuse that each individual. Even in the Gulag, I think some of the people that did best in the Gulag were the kind of more religious people who just had the faiths, and just expected things to be, life to be suffering and people to be, horrible at times. So you're not putting up, you're just relying on yourself in a way and your own spiritual attitude. So yeah, so I think I'll end there. Come back to me. It all has to come back to oneself and what oneself is doing, and what one's desires are for the world and all that sort of thing, and to take the precept of the Llama. So I'll finish on that precept of the Llama, which is like the person who really kind of cares for us and understands us and knows what we really need to do next for our growth, that we take notice of that and In fact, we seek it out. We ask them. We're open to. We're wanting to know what we should do next to grow and to develop. So we're actively inviting it. So there's no question of being told what to do. We're being asked we're asking what we should do. That's this sort of thing. Yeah, from our preceptor. Great, thank you. That'll do. All right, bye bye.